reporting. Let me turn now to someone who knows what it takes to win statewide in Pennsylvania. It's a family that knows how to win statewide in Pennsylvania. It's Commonwealth's Democratic Senator Bob Casey. Senator Casey, it's good to see you. Let me start with what we saw on your side of the aisle. John Fetterman won and won quite handily. Did Conor Lamb lose the race or did John Fetterman win it?
No, Chuck, I think it was a commanding performance by John Fetterman. I've been paying a lot of attention to primaries virtually my whole life, as you know, and I've run in a few myself. So I know a lot about the data. I have never seen in a major race for the United States Senate or governor or even president a more overwhelming primary win. It was virtually every county. Now, I guess one or two might change with the total vote count, but in the end, he may win every single county. The margin was big. But probably most importantly, as a precursor or a foundation for the general election, is he was winning in urban areas with big margins. He was winning in suburban communities and overwhelmingly in rural communities. I counted about half of the counties he was winning with four candidates in the race, more than 70% of the county's votes. So it's a strong foundation, and I think it gives him a great start for the general election.
What do you learn from why Fetterman won so big? I mean, look, the way conventional wisdom works. I mean, Conor Lamb, Josh Shapiro, if you had talked to Democrats 2 years ago, maybe if I'd talked to you off the record, you'd have said, yeah, that's going to be the strong Democratic ticket. What's your take on why Fetterman seemed to connect all across the board and Conor Lamb did not?
Well, Chuck, one thing he's done, and it obviously helps that he's a statewide elected official. He's run statewide before. But one thing that helped him enormously, I think, is that he, as a public official and as a candidate, has gone to every county, and he talks about counting every vote in every county and going to every place. And I think that helps because often what Democrats do in primaries, you go to urban areas because that's where most of the primary vote is in suburban communities. But he's gone everywhere. And I think that broad-based foundation he starts with will be enormously beneficial because to win our state, you've got to do three things well, right? You've got to maximize your vote in urban communities. You've got to perform very well in suburban Philadelphia and other parts of the state that are suburban. But you have to reduce margins in rural areas. And sometimes some of that work has to be done in the winter and spring before the fall election. I think John's done that, and he'll take no region for granted.
Do you have any concern? I've talked to some African-American Democrats who believe Fetterman needs a better answer. I think that's what Simone Sanders put it. Fetterman needs a better answer to the jogger incident. If he doesn't want to see it used against him to sort of to essentially slow turnout in Philadelphia.
Well, look, I think he'll be asked that question, as any candidate will, in a new phase now in the general election. But I do think the fact that he was asked that question repeatedly during the primary in debates and in interviews and in public forums, and then we had an election, the primary itself, and he did very well in urban communities throughout the state. So I think some of that was answered, but I'm sure he'll get the question again. The key thing here, though, Chuck, as you know, is that this is now a choice, a very simple choice, between someone who has fought night and day on behalf of working families and communities throughout the state. Right. And on the other side, you've got two candidates that are vying for this. We'll see how their election turns out. But you've got two candidates vying for the nomination on the Republican side who have spent months now twisting themselves in all kinds of shapes to genuflect to Donald Trump, not to make a case for why they should be United States Senator from Pennsylvania. John Fetterman's done that, and I like our chances.
I want to ask you about the risky decision Josh Shapiro's campaign made to elevate Doug Mastriano. They spent some money making the case that he was too conservative and too close to Donald Trump. We know what the point was he didn't have a lot of funding. They wanted him to be the nominee. You've heard of the cliche, careful what you wish for. He would be awfully, he's got his own set of conspiracy theories about election results. Are you at all concerned that the Shapiro campaign was a bit too cute there?
No, look, Josh ran a very strong primary election, even though he didn't have a primary opponent. And I think what he wanted to do was what any candidate would like to do, is to begin to make the argument against a likely general election opponent. And in this case, I think he started that debate and started that conversation. The people of Pennsylvania, especially maybe in governor's races, but I think it also applies to Senate races, very rarely will vote for a candidate who's on the extreme, in this case, the hard extreme right. An election denier and someone who has said things, I think, that are contrary to what most Pennsylvanians believe. So I think he started that debate, and now we have two candidates on the field, so to speak. Josh is going to run a 67-county campaign. He's going to take his message everywhere. I think he's got a great record of performance, but I think most important is what he's talked about in terms of what he will do as governor when it comes to the economy and jobs and lifting up families.
Look, I know you've got a new bill to try to address the baby formula issue, but let me ask you a question about it this way. We have a strategic oil reserve. We actually, I think, have a strategic cheese reserve. In hindsight, it seems pretty obvious we should have a strategic formula reserve. Why don't we?
Well, first of all, I think we've got to consider ideas like that. And Chuck, we're at a point now where in the near term, I think the most important thing we've got to do is to make sure the supply increases. The president and his team are trying to do that. Members of Congress are trying to do that with either appropriations or policy changes. But we also have to make sure this doesn't happen again. And one of the problems here wasn't just contamination, it was notification, or I should say lack of notification.
Yeah.
My bill will ensure that the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, can work with these manufacturers so that you have notification to give families a heads up if there's going to be a disruption in the supply chain. But I'm open to lots of ideas, including those that would lead to a greater supply or an emergency supply, as you suggest.
Hey, look, I got to ask you one other thing about this. This feels as if government actually helped the monopoly stay in power, right, by creating it, making it hard for exports and things like that. I mean, this feels like a failure of government regulation on a number of levels, Senator.
Well, Chuck, look, I'm open to any changes that are going to lead to a better circumstance for families. There's no question that when you have an infant formula supply nationwide, and one company controls 50%, and several other companies control the other 50%, you're going to have problems. So that's a whole other debate about how to ensure that you have more diversity there, and making sure that we have emergency provisions or emergency strategies. These companies have to have contingency plans, which is something else that my bill speaks to.
I saw that it did that, and I was like, all right, let's see if we can get the strategic formula reserve. It looks like that you're definitely circling around something like that. Anyway, Senator Bob Casey, Democrat from Pennsylvania, always good to get your perspective with us.
Thanks, Chuck.